Alrighty, so we are going to kick off. My name is 𝐍𝐸𝐚 𝐒𝐞𝐿. Thank you very much for either joining this webinar live or joining the recording on YouTube. If you're watching the recording, you can always let me know on LinkedIn or via email or whatever works for you. If you have any questions, follow-ups, whatever you need, I'm here for it. I'm here to help. This is Genway Academy, where I've been partnering with Genway to use an AI research tool to conduct interviews about all sorts of top-of-mind topics. And the topic of today is AI hope or hype. Certainly a lot of hype about AI, at least supposedly. We'll talk about that a bit later. But my big question was, can AI solve our biggest societal challenges and problems? And maybe more accurately, it would be to say, do people in the public believe that AI can solve these challenges or not? So that was the topic. As always, I like to cover a little bit about Genway AI and the tool I use to conduct this research. And then later on, I'll jump into the research topic of the day, which is hope or hype, public perceptions of AI's potential to address our biggest societal challenges, talk about some insights and takeaways. And then I'm happy to have any kind of discussion until you're sick of me. So let's do that. In case you're watching this or here live and you don't know what Genway is an AI interviewing platform that can conduct either usability studies or contextual interviews for you with an AI agent. In this case, I conducted contextual interviews, but you can also hook up a Figma prototype and conduct not unmoderated, not exactly moderated, or at least not by humans, moderated by AI usability studies. This is a new category. And then something interesting that I've been using with Genway recently, and maybe you've been using other custom GPTs as well, is Genway GPT, which is Genway's custom GPT for building out a project. Basically, if you're a researcher and you're struggling to build out your partially fleshed out idea into a full-blown project, you can use Genway GPT, if you're trying to conduct interviews with Genway, to build out the entire project. All you have to do is prompt Genway with whatever you feel like you know that you want to do. And so here I wrote that I want to run a study on whether people see AI as mostly hype or if they're hopeful that AI could actually be the solution for society's greatest challenges. And I go on to give some context. For years, we've heard that the technology will revolutionize how we tackle challenges, but technology has mostly overpromised and underdelivered. Is AI any different? And I wanted to gather perspectives from a diverse population. And so I did. The output of Genway GPT is this. It's the full project details answering the 5 questions that you need to answer as you input a project into Genway, which is, what's the project's objective? What topics will we be covering? What does success look like? Who will we be interviewing? Who's in the sample? And any other specific guidelines you have. And so once you fill all of these out, you're good to go. You can start doing the research. And with that, unless there are any questions about using Genway, I'm going to jump into the research itself and talk a little bit about what I was able to find by conducting these interviews. And again, the overarching question was, although the results took me in a different direction slightly, but is this more... Are people more hopeful, or do people feel like it's mostly hype? Can AI actually solve our greatest challenges, or do people not believe it can? And I conducted this research with Genway. I conducted 120 interviews in total. I had about 90% engagement, which means that Of the people who began the interview, about 90% completed the full interview for an average of 11 minutes of conversation. And about 7% of people chose to extend the interview beyond the full 15 minutes and discussed extra thoughts about AI. So those are the general statistics. The sample, by the way, was a global sample from the US and Europe, people who work in all sorts of industries, not just tech people like myself, people who have various levels of knowledge about AI and about technology in general. So it was a very diverse sample of people, men, women, all ages, college grads to 65-year-olds. Truly a diverse sample, which is something I really wanted because I don't know about you who are watching this either now or later on, but as someone who has been working in tech for a very long time, as someone who's an early adopter of technology, as someone who uses AI all the time. So what were those opinions and what can we learn about people's takes on AI through this research? So my TLDR is that I came into this thinking that this would be about hope versus hype. Either people are hopeful that AI can do the job, or people feel like there's way too much hype. And I would define what we're seeing in this diverse global sample as conflicted anticipation, is how I defined it. I think people are very conflicted because on the one hand, they're identifying the potential that AI has to make a real difference to some of the key problems we have as a society. And on the other hand, they know how things work in this world, and they know that we are already failing in many ways when it comes to how we're building AI, and they're very concerned about how we're building AI and what's going to come of it. An example, before we get to a specific example, I called this balancing AI's promise and peril. People, on the one hand, talked a lot about positive impact, climate change fixes, educational enhancements, healthcare improvements. And on the other hand, people discussed negative impact, in particular, economic disparity, which just seems to be growing, and inequalities in general being exacerbated, and a lot of ethical concerns. People don't seem to feel, and probably rightfully, that AI is being developed with sense of purpose when it comes to building these things in an ethical manner. That is not how people are feeling. And overshadowing pretty much everything that people had to say, the number one thing that people talked about was that there are major concerns about the viability of the two main mitigations for AI-induced job displacement and economic inequality. So I think a lot of people in tech are basically saying, yeah, everything's cyclical, jobs come and go, societies change, there's the Industrial Revolution, other revolutions that happened in the past, and it was always okay, and people always found what to do. But especially for people in the US, which a lot of the people in this sample were, there are two things on people's mind. First of all, universal basic income seems like a great solution for what AI is causing, job displacement, economic inequality. And then the other thing was people had strong feedback on retraining programs. There's all these ideas that we'll be able to equip workers with new skills for emerging job sectors, reducing unemployment. But people are saying that they are really struggling to keep up with AI and the pace at which AI is developing. And for anyone who hasn't been in tech all of these years, it just feels like it's too late and too difficult to learn. And in that sense, they're not thinking about hype, they're not thinking about hope, they're thinking about pessimism, mostly, I would suggest, and some major issues with mitigating the economic effects of AI. So that's number one. Now, people do believe that AI can improve all sorts of things around, in this example, healthcare. So people believe that AI can lead to improved diagnoses and better patient outcomes. But the costs are very high. So people in the context of healthcare talked about privacy concerns, talked about a lack of empathetic care experiences, moving from unempathetic doctors to unempathetic AI doesn't seem much of a positive change. So there's a need for human oversight. There are major data privacy concerns. What will AI do with my medical data? And what data of mine might be showcased to all sorts of models and therefore maybe people? And just the importance of human empathy. It doesn't feel like the systems that are already in place in healthcare have added anything to the amount of empathy I get when I go to get healthcare. So why would that be any different with AI? So pros and cons. There were also pros and cons when it comes to education. Is personalized and efficient learning, which people believe AI can deliver, is that going to cost us our independence and our critical thinking? So in the context of education, everyone was saying AI can be great to finally personalize learning. Every single student could get their own version of education, perfectly personalized to what they need. The entire teaching process and learning process will be so much more efficient. But then again, on the other side, there's so much need for human oversight, and there's a major risk that people will become completely over-reliant on AI tools. Critical thinking abilities will essentially be wiped out by AI systems. And this is a major concern within education that I've seen. I have 3 kids, by the way, and those kids are in the public education system. And I definitely feel like they are slowly losing the capabilities that I think I did develop at school when it comes to critical thinking in particular. So those are the education concerns. And it keeps on going. Climate issues. Climate is maybe the biggest issue that we have, I would suggest, because if we can't deal with climate change, then we're all going to die premature deaths. So it's a bad situation. And people believe that AI can help us understand climate issues and optimize solutions. But also, no technology in history has required so much energy that's being so irresponsibly used. Basically, AI can support climate modeling. It can help us optimize our energy use, but we're not using it responsibly, and we're consuming massive amounts of energy. And people are like, yeah, for now, it just seems like we're ruining our climate even more. And that's a major issue. Definitely troubling. Definitely too many of us are creating funny images and funny songs and all sorts of random funny things. I do this as well with AI, rather than using it for climate modeling, and the energy expenditure is bonkers. So again, not really about hope, not really about hype either, mostly a realistic view of how AI could contribute, but also a realistic view about all of the things we're getting wrong about AI. There's also the topic of crime prevention and criminal justice. And I called this the Minority Report problem. I'm not sure if you watched the incredible movie, one of my favorites, The Minority Report, which deals, I'm not going to spoil it for you in case you haven't watched it, but the movie deals with this philosophical idea of, can we prevent future crimes from happening? Is the future deterministic? And if it is deterministic, does that mean we can prevent bad things from happening? And so people are saying, yeah, AI can improve justice efficiency and it can enhance crime prevention, but there's all sorts of ethical questions around using AI to predict crime or prevent crime, and major bias issues, because these systems are learning from our history, and our history is riddled with bias. So again, major issues to tackle. And there's just a deep lack of trust and belief in the capabilities of governments around the world. Education issues, health issues, climate, crime, but it needs to be regulated. There needs to be job displacement mitigation, more transparency with the public, ethical oversight, privacy protections. And who's going to do this? And who's going to do this, especially at a time when the US just announced the biggest job cuts in recent years, ever since the pandemic started, and one of the biggest job cuts in the history of this country, primarily because DOGE eliminated jobs in the federal government. We don't have the people or the capabilities to do this. And people just don't trust the government to do this, and not just in the US, by the way. And how will anyone in government keep up with everything that's going on with AI? This is the level of understanding of technological systems that the typical congressperson or senator has. Check this out.
Mr. Chow, if I plug in my earphones into my phone while they're in my ear, can TikTok know what's going on in my brain?
Are you a citizen?
Singapore.
Are you a citizen of any other nation?
No, Senator.
Have you ever applied for Chinese citizenship?
Senator, I served my nation in Singapore. No, I did not.
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Senator, I'm Singaporean. No.
Have you ever been associated or affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party?
No, Senator. Again, I'm Singaporean.
Mr. Chu, does TikTok access the home Wi-Fi network?
Only if the user turns on the Wi-Fi.
If I have TikTok app on my phone and my phone is on my home Wi-Fi network, does TikTok access that network?
It will have to access the network to get connections to the internet, if that's the question.
Can you assure me, or can you at least tell me, if you turn on airplane mode on a plane, can TikTok talk to the plane, please?
Yeah, that's the level of tech understanding that our lawmakers and regulators have, which is unfortunate. So the bottom line for me from all of this research is that it was never really a question of hope versus hype. I actually think that people have very realistic expectations of technology, and they are able to identify all sorts of cases where technology could be incredibly beneficial, where AI technology specifically could be incredibly beneficial. But people also have very realistic expectations of humans. People understand how flawed we are, and the fact that we're not developing these systems with proper ethics in mind, and the fact that we have biases and we've included these biases in these systems, and we're not being thoughtful enough about how we use these systems. And I wouldn't define people as hopeful, and I wouldn't define this as a hype cycle that's going away. I think AI has incredible capabilities, but people are pessimistic about the future. And to demonstrate how people feel, since I'm a sort of a UX researcher by trade, I follow research people mostly. And in recent weeks, both Judd Antin, who was the head of research at Airbnb when I was there, and Sam Ladner, who has, I think, partially retired, but she's an incredible research leader and author and strategist and many other things. They both recently discussed the problematic nature of AI being trained on either their works or other artists and authors' works without those people's permission. In the case of Sam Ladner, it was specifically training on her books. And law hasn't caught up to this yet. The laws are still antiquated compared to the technology. And we're just starting to see court decisions come out that pertain to this technology and that decide whether this is stealing people's works or using them in a way that is unfair. And we're yet to see what's going to happen here. But this is a good example of some highly problematic uses of this technology and the fact that we are not doing very well when it comes to how we're developing and leveraging AI. We have a small webinar today, to say the least. I would love to hear your opinions, or if you have any questions about this research, about Genway, about doing AI research, about anything, I would be more than delighted to discuss. You can use the comments on StreamYard, or if you're not watching this live and you're watching the recording, feel free to DM me on LinkedIn or email me, whatever works for you, and I'll be happy to get back to you. So I want to open up the floor for discussion, questions, comments, anger, hope, hype, whatever you're feeling. I'd love to hear. I'll give it a minute or two just to see if we have anything. And again, super open to discuss whatever. So please feel free. Do we have a brave soul in the audience with a question, a thought? Oh, here we go. Alrighty, so the question is, I hadn't heard of Genway before, but it looks really cool, especially how fast you were able to conduct over 100 interviews. Do you think companies will eventually replace human researchers with AI? So first of all, Genway is cool. And the fact that you can interview over 100 people, hypothetically, in a matter of minutes, if not hours, it just depends on the availability of people. Will AI replace humans or human researchers? In the short term to the medium term, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think that people still often love to interview with people. People love to connect with people. And I think that researchers are needed in all sorts of stages within the research process. I think that in the AI era that we're in, a couple of things in particular are really important for human researchers to be involved in. The first is the inputs to the system, because ultimately, Genway, for example, can only perform well when the inputs to Genway, I didn't demo this properly, but I shared about Genway GPT, which is my way as a researcher to build out my project within Genway and get it right and provide the system with just enough context and information so it can do its job. There's this principle in computer science that's been going on for decades. Garbage in, garbage out. If you give an AI system garbage, you're going to get garbage out of it. So it's really important for a well-trained researcher to give high-quality inputs to these systems. And then the second thing that researchers will need to be involved in for a long time, I feel, is everything to do with socializing and activating insights and making sure that insights go and affect the decisions that are happening at a company. I don't really see AI performing that role particularly well. And I still think that for as long as we have people building technological products, even if we are not the people executing the research itself, we should be the people and will be the people who socialize the insights, activate the insights, and serve as partners to everyone else who's building products. In the long term, I don't think anything is off the table completely. I don't know how we're going to deal with the economic ramifications of AI. I think it's possible that AI will replace humans, not just human researchers, but all sorts of people in tech. Maybe everyone in tech. I don't know. I think in the long term, it's possible. And do I know what we do in tech? If AI is able to replace researchers and designers and engineers and marketers and legal people and HR people, I don't have a good answer to that. So that's the best I could give right now. but feel free to follow up. What are you most optimistic about when it comes to AI? How about usage of AI in the research space? I am fairly optimistic about AI. I do think it's a markedly different technology from what we've seen before, with markedly different capabilities. I think that people in the study got it right. AI does have incredible potential to solve major problems that we haven't been able to solve before. Again, as an example, I'm a parent of 3 children who are currently going through a very antiquated educational system. And my children are not getting the personalized education that I would want them to get, and that AI can deliver. Appreciate for doing their best and for having a very hard job, and it's not paid very well either. So I appreciate them very much, but my children are not getting the education that I would want them to, and I think AI might be the solution to that. I think AI might be the solution to all of the most horrible diseases that we've had to face. I've lost many people in my life to cancer. Perhaps those watching have as well. I think that this technology will help diagnose people better, give better treatment, make fewer mistakes in healthcare, and that's a huge deal. Those are some of the things I am optimistic about. I'm also optimistic about using AI in the research space, because I think that we have been very limited in what we've been able to do as researchers. I believe that the notion that we can talk to just a few people about a topic and then we hit diminishing returns, and it's fine that most of our projects are conversations with 5, 6, 10, even 15 people. I don't think that flies anymore. I don't think it should have for a very long time. I think that the notion that talking to just a few people is enough came out of a study from the year 2000, when technology was very different, websites were very different, everything was much simpler. And these days, I think that we should be gathering deeper feedback, broader feedback from global populations. We should be interviewing people in all languages across the globe. Let their voices be heard, and let us speak to as many people as it takes to really understand the complexity of how people encounter our products. You can do that with AI research tools. You can't do that without. So I am optimistic and I am excited about AI in research, but it's not like there aren't any potential issues. So that's my take. Glad to hear that you agree with the points about AI's future role in the improvement of education and healthcare. There are other sectors I believe AI can improve. I just feel like few things are more important in life than your health and your education. So I chose to mention those two in particular. Anything else on people's minds? So I'm going to give it another minute just to give people a chance to type out their questions or their comments. Okay, so I'm going to read this comment if it's okay with you. I think your points, I'll keep this anonymous. I think your points about proper inputs and socializing insights are valid. I have to admit, I'm feeling a bit jaded and pessimistic about the UX research space, having recently been laid off. I was working in government consulting. It seems that in a capitalistic society, companies will always prioritize profitability and shareholder values over the humanity of its own employees. In other words, if they can find a solution that's cheaper and faster, they will take it. I'm very sorry to hear. And I don't mind sharing with whoever's watching this, either live or later, that I was laid off twice from tech jobs I had. And it's really twice and a half because I left Twitter right before Elon Musk took over and fired everyone. The same Elon Musk that is leading Doge. So first of all, I'm sorry that you went through that experience, and I've been through it as well. So I can truly empathize. my take on this is that the best we can do right now, assuming you want to stay in the UX research space or assuming you want to stay in tech in general, the best thing we can do right now for ourselves is to learn how to leverage these tools so we can help whatever organization we choose to help with our talents get more value, be more profitable. If it's a for-profit company, if you choose to work for a for-profit company, then yeah, they want to maximize that profit. That's what they're prioritizing. And we, with the help of AI tools, can, I believe, deliver a lot more value. And through that value, hopefully be appreciated for what we're bringing to the table. Maybe that's naive. Maybe it's just plain wrong. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, again, either live or later on. But that's my honest take. And I've been through my share of traumatic and difficult experiences in tech. By the way, to the person who wrote that comment, if there's anything I can do to help personally, feel free to reach out after this. Any last things before we finish up for today? And for those of you who joined live, thanks a bunch for joining. I really appreciate it. Move back to my final slide here. I think we'll end there for this time. I'm Noam Siegel. This has been Genway's Academy, the place where I share all sorts of research I've been doing with AI by leveraging Genway. If you want to try out Genway and do your own AI research or learn more about how AI research works, all you have to do is go to genway.ai and try it out for free. If you have any questions, comments, please feel free to be in touch. I welcome it very much and love being part of this community. For those of you who joined live, thank you. And for those of you watching the recording, I hope to see you live in another future webinar. Cheers. Bye for now.